I think Honorable Subrathi has really captured the sentiments of the committee in terms of why we are here, so I won't repeat, except maybe to make the point, Deputy Minister. You come to on a regular basis, and I think you would find there that the conversations with yourselves are quite robust. And as we come here today, over and beyond seeking to understand, the government communication system, the issues here, I think it's also to pledge our support. And I think we said this to you the last time, that the GCIS, we do appreciate that you work, in new, different conditions. There's a lot of expectations from yourselves. And as a committee, we've taken a posture and approach that says that while we will exercise oversight, ensure that the executive is accountable, ensure that delivery is happening in line with your mandate, ours is to make sure that Parliament supports you in doing that work. So please, as the spirit of the engagement today, and where there are challenges, please do not shy away from raising those challenges. Understand, then we can also intervene on your behalf on some of those issues. So without wasting any time, please may I invite Deputy Minister Morolong to lead us in the discussion. Oh, just to say, the members, I have received an apology from Honorable Sithole, who I think will be joining us later. So maybe he'll just introduce himself when he arrives. DM, thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Communication and Digital Technologies, our distinguished lawmakers, members of the Portfolio Committee, the management of GCIS and MDDA. Good morning, colleagues. Let me take this opportunity to convey our appreciations to the Portfolio Committee for this important visit to our offices. We are looking forward to fruitful relations with you as public representatives of our people. Communication and the dissemination of information are central tenets of a functioning democratic government. It is no accident, therefore, that this function is a constitutional injunction. An appreciation and understanding of these premises will ensure that we fulfill the prescripts of the Constitution, including political, social, and other rights. This injunction, to which I earlier referred, obliges government to properly provide timely and accurate information about its policies and programs. However, these information sharing and dissemination must take into account the changing media landscape and information consumption patterns in the digital era. What does this mean in the actual sense and practice? A number of things needs to be changed. GCIS must ensure that it uses the multiplier force of strategic partnerships to creatively develop and implement platforms that will inform South Africans and government and the citizenry about government's agenda of social transformation. In ensuring that we carry out our twin mandate as it relates to coordination, we have a network of communicators across the three spheres of government. This network provides for a powerful mechanism, if coordinated effectively, to improve the flow of our messages. Of course, it makes campaigns and strategies to be managed within relevant departments. However, we need to coordinate more effectively across government. We must build on the professional capacity of government communication so that we can increase public awareness and understanding of government policies and programs. We also need to understand and respond to the extraordinary growth in new media and use these channels to build new bridges between government and those on whose behalf it governs. Chairperson, community media plays a vital role in promoting social change, empowering marginalized communities, and fostering democracy. This sector empowers marginalized voices, fostering community engagement, promoting social change, democratizing media, and supporting local government. Government's international agenda is intrinsically linked to the national development agenda. The question going forward is, how do we ensure that South Africans in all sectors understand and appreciate the value of international engagements in attaining domestic priorities? The upcoming G20 provides an opportunity for us to galvanize our energies. I hope that the engagements that will ensue today will move government communications to a higher level and ensure that we raise the standard of communicating with the public. These honorable members is a humble reminder that we dare not forget that we carry the hopes of South Africans who have entrusted us with their lives. I thank you.
The value chain across all the spheres of government and how they contribute to the communication machinery. After that, we must have a discussion on this critical issue of compliance, and we're hoping that you would have Mr. Nene sought an audit from government in terms of the compliance to the 30% ad spend on community media. If I may invite is it you, Michael? Mr. Karen, if you can lead the presentation, thank you.
Radio, while Mr. Chauke loads us up, Honourable Chairperson, Ms. Diko, MP, and the members of the Portfolio Committee, a very good morning to you and welcome to Tsedi Motetso House. Honourable Deputy Minister Morolong, MP, welcome to you, Kenny. It's good to have you with us. Honourable Subramani, it's very nice to see all the members in person. And now we know that the digital age hasn't consumed us and made us cyborgs, every one of us, so we are people. So I'm going to try and be very brief. It's a long presentation. We've given handouts, honourable members, with some of the more granular detail, but let's give it a go and share. And thank you very much. As the Deputy Minister said, and to all our friends from the sector, thank you very much, Honourable Chair, for the time dedicated to and deep diving and helping us be better. We're a very proud organisation. Honourable members, I'm very pleased to say in the midst of the field there are all the members of our management committee. So they are the senior managers who deal with these specific disciplines who will be with us today. So, first and foremost, a very interesting question on contribution to the value chain. And I always learned that listen to the question at varsity, then hopefully you can answer it. So that was a good question. I'm going to try very hard to do. The Honourable Chair, having had an experience with me before, knows I'm very short with words. So I'm going to try my very not to be too long. The contribution, ladies and gentlemen, must be seen in a context of a function that is collaborative, really speaks to the character of intergovernmental South Africa. A function that finds itself located, honourable members, in the very best of the collaboration between spheres of government, firstly at a horizontal level, nationally, and then vertically from the national right down to Hlabisa in rural KZN and upwards. Saying that, it's not a legislative function. It's not something that we have a command control. So in Britain, I once heard Honourable Michael Bella, they pick up the phone and they say to this MLO, that's strike one. And if they make a mistake, strike two, strike three, gone. We don't have that system. We have a system of collegiality. We have a system of relationships between the spheres of governments. And Within that ecosystem, we have a whole range of communication partners and stakeholders. But from our side, to take that strategic leadership role and provide a range of contributions in two broad categories, I think, Honourable Subramanian and honourable members. One, I think at a strategic level, and two, at a tactical level. And tactics includes a range of platforms and products that are valuable to the system. So yes, we do have a variety of enabling legislation, and I'm not going to take time to speak those, but we've organized ourselves, as Deputy Minister Morolong said, around two critical pillars in delivering on that strategy and tactic. Firstly, is to coordinate, guide, and lead a government-wide communication system. And our founding parent, father, Mr. Nishitenze, was always adamant on the S at the end of system. And then see, either through our relationship with our partners, but also through our own group of products and platforms to deliver information directly to our citizens. Some of it then is coordinated and partnered, others is directly delivered by ourselves. The end game, honourable members, is a better South Africa. It's a South Africa that we all feel part of. It's a South Africa where our national identity and our nationhood are part of realizing a bigger goal. And it's a cohesive society. It's a society that works. And it's a society that has jobs for all our people. And I'll touch on that in a minute. And above all, ladies and gentlemen, it's a society that has an end, a national development plan that seeks, I would like to say, a higher good. So within that large framework, I think the GCIS has a couple of critical areas. The first thing is the creation of a good communication system, and that is by no law or compulsion, but by the creation of good norms and standards for practice. It's about putting in place what you should and what you shouldn't do. Honourable members, it does sometimes mean no picking up a phone call and saying strike one, but picking up a phone call and having a tough conversation with a colleague who hasn't necessarily executed a standard very well. Very critically, it's about the development of the guidebook, storybook for all government communication. And that's the second to last bullet, is the development on a 5-year cycle of National Communication Strategic Framework, which is drawn from the development plan. We're now in our last 5-year development plan to the NDP, and the National Communication Strategic Framework is the communicator's content Bible, so to speak. Obviously, under guidelines and standards for good practice, we have a policy, and that policy guides around the execution of that service. Obviously, our role then is to lead and drive that communication process across all three spheres of government. So therefore, honourable members, both at strategy and good practice level, but also at the content level. And therefore, for example, honourable members, the honourable member was opening with a question about relationship with other departments, with other spheres of government. One of our critical roles, honourable members, is to assist both clusters, and I'll come to it in a minute, as well as departments, provinces, and then through our provincial and district offices, district communications machinery to develop their communication strategy on a 5-year basis. And then to make sure that every year on an annual basis that communication strategy is advised. Obviously, we do have the authority of being located in the presidency. We work in a very cooperative government. We don't work in a government where we instruct people what to do. However, the president remains the communicator in chief, as we say here. The communicator in chief in the presidency is the one who sets the tone, a 5-year basis with the opening of Parliament address earlier last year, and then on an annual basis with the State of the Nation address, setting out the content and priority programs of a government of the day, which sets a very clear sense of that which must be communicated as a priority. So I just want to go back there. And then obviously the whole purpose of this exercise is around the development of information or the delivery of information, programs, access to policies with the intention of bettering the lives of South Africans. So one or two indicative points, not from the whole policy, but what are the things, Honourable Subrathi, we want to ensure that our colleagues have in their mind when they are busy swapping a SASSA gold card for a black card. And we've done some work since we engaged with yourselves, honourable members, last week. The interest of the public comes first. Ugogo cannot sit for 6 hours in the sun waiting to get a card swap. And the communicator, unfortunately, cannot always resolve the fact that there's a serious technical problem in the manner of the technical swap of the card. But the principle is dignity and interest of the public. We are located in the presidency, so therefore we do have that sense of central coordination messages, allowing, of course, for interpretation or for application in different spheres of government. We are very clear that government communication does not happen in an ad hoc and a frivolous way. It must happen according to very planned and very well developed strategies that are underpinned by core messaging. The other principle that I thought I'd like to elucidate today is that we are a system that articulates policy. We don't make the policy or determine the manner of it. We articulate that ourselves. And that sometimes is where communicators cross the line, honourable members, between being active public service and sometimes going into a space that interprets their role a bit differently. And we don't stand for that. We stand for the execution of policy as it's been determined by government. But very critically, and I'll touch on this a bit later, it's around direct communication, bullet number 8, and mutual exchange of information, of issues, of problems, of challenges between government communicators and the citizens of our country. And very importantly, number 10, we do review, honourable members, the 5-year strategy that went before. One of the things, and it's a new word I learned from you project managers out there and the technocrats, cadence, frequency, predictability, determined in communication. So number 10, communication is not, it was always there, by the way, on our 10 points for good government communication that we developed with Mr. Neshitenze and his team back then. But now it's about regular briefings and frequency, that there's not this long gap between briefings of a cluster. Or I don't think I need to mention the one where cadence played a critical role, Honourable Chair, in turning the public's understanding of our energy crisis, where the Minister of Electricity is rigorous. And you saw on Sunday, when there's a problem, there's a briefing. And that is the kind of cadence and frequency we really want to elevate in this second term. So the President is Commander-in-Chief of our system. He is the ultimate tone setter and storyteller of the storyline of the National Communications Strategic Framework. We work also with principles where we have ministers, we have premiers, we have MECs, we have mayors. They are who the people vote for. You as legislators, legislative makers, lawmakers are who the public knows. Public servants are not the face of an institution, although I'll touch on that in a minute. So those political principles in our policy, we want our leadership to be visible, to be accessible to the public on a frequent basis, and that rapport and that engagement with the citizens can happen. We've spent a lot of work in the 6th administration, honourable members, building the role of accounting officers, ensuring that as DGs and others in the leadership of departments, they too become much more active in communicating the work of their portfolio, in being accessible to the public, in going on community radio stations, in writing opinion editorials for community print and other media. Obviously, the accounting officer is very key, ladies and gentlemen, in making sure that we can't just talk about strategy and comms plans and actually not have the machinery to do it. So a critical function that GCIS does with those norms and standards, honourable members, is to give an accounting officer a basic set of what should their communication portfolio look like. What should their budget be? No, you can't just expect to have a huge reach in a rural municipality and they've got no money. Or you don't want to take the 10 community radio stations in the local footprint of your municipality and give the communicator money to put the mayor on air. And some of the amazing work we've been doing last year, and my colleague Moipeng and her team in the provinces are going to be working on it this year, is intensifying this campaign of mayor on air. Know your mayor, know your councillor, because those people who are elected into office are the ones who know what it is that they are put in office to do and account for that. But the accounting officer is fundamental to make a system, Honourable Subrathi, on that question of a contribution to a value chain, because you can't have a chain that is snapped at a certain point. And by snapped, I mean 99, 2001, 2002, Honourable Diko, very few municipalities had communicators. I'm proud to say that because of the advocacy that's happened from this centre, that those elements of the policy have changed. We have much, much, much bigger take-up on that. I'm not going to go through the roles of the HSC and the MLO. They are very specific, they are very critical, and they are our partners. But on the Deputy Director Generals there, and I just want to, if you'd allow me an anecdote, I love anecdotes, Honourable Saul, it's my nature, is this week, I'm so proud to tell you, last night, the Sous Sherpa, Ambassador Mbongo, who is the Sous Sherpa for our G20, in Brazil, nogal, on his work there, connected to the community radio stations last night. Honourable members, we buy, remember, because my colleague Shweshwe will have me up if I don't want to pay, or bid freebie, 99 or 100 Honourable Diko stations were logged in. We logged in Honourable the Ambassador Mbongo from Brazil. The team had him on Zoom and that. Do you know what happened in the end? 204 stations logged in. They were so excited about that topic, about the G20, benefits to South Africa. That was last night. Monday night, post-SONA, the President spoke about trade, opening new trade horizons, new trade barriers. How can young people get into trade in the African Continental Free Trade Area? Ambassador Kolila from DTRC and Susan, the two of the DDGs, went on the show, hour-long show, speaking about those opportunities. How do we access them as young people? Apparently the telephone lines were flooded. Late last year, we had Minister Stella Ndabeni-Abrahams in the studio speaking about opportunities for small business. They're coming again, I hope, her and Minister Tao, to speak about this fund that's been set up. So what I'm saying here is we're also moving with our platforms to bring technical experts in. And it doesn't only have to be the minister. So that's the background and the landscape very broadly. When you paint a picture, that's the canvas. Where do we find ourselves today on the 26th of February 2025? Number one, we find ourselves as a very principled agency, a system that believes that communication is a constitutional responsibility and imperative. It is based in the Constitution. It is our obligation to be a transparent, accountable, trustworthy, a consultative, a capacity enhancement, a very having integrity, and a very inclusive institution. And that's what we want to be here, in the center that should hold, and right to the periphery, where our colleagues are in local and district municipalities. Secondly, we have a unity government. The unity government has come in with a statement of intent that, in essence, ascribes to a very high value base of social justice, of delivering a value society. And the unity government's perspective is one of a society that benefits all, irrespective of any party differences. I mean, you saw with the budget last week, the ministers were very adamant and candid to say, yes, there will always be social contestation, and in a unity government, it might even be more contested. However, what is the end purpose of communication? And I think that is where GCIS is finding its niche. Our end purpose is not only to be this democratic system, but to be a system that accounts quickly and effectively on that value proposition. Now, as said, In the olden days of this system, and I certainly wasn't there, I only joined a few weeks back, being in my 20s, we had a saying that said, and Honorable Dika, I'll quote it on those days, you know the old saying, content is king. I suppose you've all heard that one before, no? Well, we didn't like that in the late 90s because some of us were young and active and still a little bit fitter than perhaps today. We used to say content is queen. Content is queen. And ladies and gentlemen, I must say for me as a strategic communicator, this is the rub of where we find ourselves now. Communication can only happen whether you've got policy or legislation, or whether you've got strategic leadership center, or you've got a mayor who's very keen to communicate regularly if you have content. And by content, we mean, in our case, at a macro level, a medium-term development plan. And we've adopted that medium-term development plan. Minister Ramokpa announced it just after so. And that plan has got three principal priorities: the economy and jobs. It's about really helping our society out of this poverty situation and the high cost of living, and it's about making sure that we are efficient. So this content area, honourable members, is a very, very critical, what's it called? It's like a catalytic element of what we do in our work. Because if we don't get the content that is right in the MDDP, in the 5 cluster communication strategies of the 5 FOSSET clusters, within the department's annual performance plan, we're not going to succeed in taking our country forward. And then, honourable members, the opening remarks made by the Honourable Subrathi about, is communication a value proposition that changes lives? It's never going to be realized. You want to communicate about other things, but do not keep our eye on communicating what the medium-term development plan is. Obviously, this year, we have the golden opportunity of being the G20 president, and that lends itself in an enormous range of opportunities. So four critical things I thought about as we enter this term and where we find ourselves today. Firstly, we have to be a very responsive government in an ever-changing political and socio-economic context. We are a global world. Something policy contested, but we have to coordinate the system, and I'll touch on that in a minute, and give that response in a very proactive and a very organized manner when there are changes. So that secondly, we have a very coherent message in the public domain, so that our citizens can understand what we are saying. Obviously, if one person in government says one thing and another, it does create some cognitive dissonance. But that's not what I understand by messaging. There will always be contested views in a democracy. But if you keep a consistent message about what the purpose of your government program is, the MTDP, and what your communication objective is, then at least people can cling on to that understanding of where the end goal is. Obviously, we want to do that very democratically. We want to do it where people are informed of their rights, as mentioned the other night, informed about programs and opportunities, because then they can make decisions about their own life and their well-being. And development communication means the receiving of information in such a way that is so relevant that it improves your life. And then, as I said earlier, honourable members, this matter of cadence and trying to really build up and ensure that there's a regular, sustained set of briefings. Now, within that broad framework, there are a number of sub-ecosystems, okay, in which we try to then do the implementation of this business. And the first one, honourable members, there you can see on the left, it's the FOSSET clusters of Director Generals. Myself, Terry, Sandia on the left, and our acting DG Nomonde, as EXCO, we are assigned to each of the 5 clusters of FOSSET. And our job there, the DDGs and the DG in the FOSSET cluster, is to follow that planning cycle of the cluster, as you see in the green there, and I'm not going to go through every one, you could perhaps see it another time, and to ensure that the communication cycle is in sync with that planning cycle. And we do this to ensure that there's alignment, coherence of message, and that we are able to be proactive. So, for example, honourable members, I believe the show that was held on Monday night on the back of SONA, and where we're speaking about new trade opportunities from the African Continental Free Trade Area. It's exactly what that means. A very quick response, a very timeless response to young people who are interested in, what can I sell to Ghana or to Kenya or whatever. We assess and we plan the communication implications of the work that goes through a cluster. Obviously, we don't do that on our own, and I'll show you the previous slide in a minute. We have cluster supervisors in GCIS who work with the two senior communicators of the co-chairs. You know that clusters are co-chaired by DGs, and the two heads of communication of that DG department, they co-chair the communication cluster. But while Terry, myself, Sandile, and Nomonde are sitting there, we are preparing the ground for communication activities from the wider system. And I'll show you that in a second. And then obviously, what that also means is it means that when cabinet memoranda are processed or policy documents, we interrogate to make sure that the colleagues from other departments, and remember we were asked the question about how do you work with other departments, we make sure that the colleagues from other departments have considered communication implications in that document. So if you have a look there, the cluster system, we have a range of communication clusters that mirror the FOSSET clusters. They ensure a constant development of an annual communication cluster. It's to really make sure that, well, we're saying cluster briefings, but a range of cluster activities need to happen on a basis or a monthly basis, and that be planned for, and that those communicators are very, very instrumental in making sure that every department, so the card swapping thing, honourable members, it was part of the social cluster plan. The SASSA ECDT collaboration with SAPO and SASSA, they did it, they had a plan, we knew that plan, but obviously it hasn't gone quite as we had hoped. And we are making some interventions, we are using our platforms to make sure we amplify it. However, one of the risks with that is increasing foot traffic to those distributors. So for example, earlier this week, Monday or Friday, I don't know, we published the points where the swapping is happening extensively. And our provincial and district officers helped. The risk with that is Ugogos come at 3 o'clock in the morning, and by the time they get there to the counter, there's some problem with the technology. So the back office is, Honourable Diko, very much aware. I said to the colleagues the other night, I said, guys, your job as a communicator is to hold the mirror up to your leader. You cannot fix that technical problem yourself. You need to, your job as a communicator is to show what's being said in the media, what are my colleague Kate Skinner's community media writing around in the village, what is the folks on SABC saying about it. We hold that mirror up and say, yeah, there's a problem here. And that's what the job of the communicators. And I'm really hoping that they did that and that they related that to both of the ministers concerned, because it is a problem. Obviously, within the sub-ecosystem, the cluster is paramount. It's very, very key, because what it does, honourable members, is it prepares the cluster strategy, but at the same time, it then interfaces with provinces, so that provinces develop their own provincial communication strategy, and they cascade that down to the district level and metros, and that we then have that relationship where we set a deadline for every national department and province to have submitted. They submitted by the end of January drafts. We're busy following up some of them now, and that interrogation is making sure that those aggressive principles of accountability with the public, have you factored in the digital era, have you looked at Izimbizo or direct communication, are all contained in those strategies. So we've got a matrix that we use to analyze those strategies and then give the colleagues feedback and direct them where we think they can do more work. So obviously the subsystems are many. I want to show you on this slide the cluster is paramount, and I'll come a bit later to one of the paramount forums. But we do have a range of others. We have a media liaison forum. It is the MOs and spokespersons to the ministers and premiers that meet on a quarterly basis. Obviously, they meet in a WhatsApp group on a frequent basis for issue management. We've engaged them this year as well, Honourable Diko, to make sure that their plans for this year have a more intentional, and this is at province level now, right? Have a more intentional, consistent feedback mechanism, and that that cadence that I spoke about in the energy space is also picked up by our provinces. We have, we have 2 government communicators forums a year, and I'll come to that in a short while. Then we have 48 district and mediation forums. So that is the network of communicators at provincial and district level that mirrors and emulates the national structure. And in those structures, colleagues, they're not meetings for the sake of meeting, developing their communication strategies. There they are dealing with key messaging. There they are dealing with key programs. The great advances, honourable members, that we've been working on, Moipeng and I are not sure if we're there yet. But at the district level, remember, we want the to look close to the DDM. It must look at the DDM. So I'm very proud to say that some of our provincial officers, honourable members, are tracking those big projects, the catalytic projects of the DDM in a district area, and we're providing opportunities to give feedback on that. Either the mayor will come and say, right, this is how far we are, so that people in that district can sense of hope and progress around things. The rapid response capability, I'm going to touch on a bit now, but that is our most frequent interaction with communicators. Honourable members, I want to be very categoric. We interact almost every single morning with our communication system, nationally and provincially. From 6 o'clock in the morning, there's a very intensive assessment of the media environment by a team here in GCIS. I'm very proud to say that a good few provinces, and I won't list them today, are making advances to have their own rapid response. If the national GCIS says, yeah, problem there in, where shall I choose today? Bochum. There's a problem in Bochum, something wrong with the hospital there. I can tell you today, if we pick up the phone and phone Ndave, Office of Premier in Limpopo, he will say to us, Chief, don't worry, we've already put it up, MEC has noted it, etc. So that works well. There's others, when you phone, they'll say to you, what is that? So there's growth, there's work to be done. But we pick up the phone, and we have that interaction early. By 8:30 in the morning, we are interacting with communicators from those departments, from those provinces. Sometimes we call them in specifically. So, Honourable Sobrathi, what we did with, after the Portfolio Committee really appealed about the gap in this, I called them to the rapid response last week after we met with yourselves on Tuesday. And and then we got to the devilish detail, and we've reinforced the communication plans around that, okay? They don't meet, and one of the most critical things that they do there, for example, and I'll give you a case in point. When a forum happens, the GCIS provincial director, working with the head of comms in the Premier's office, will be the one. They have sat in the national forum with us. So Dr. Nala over there, our research doctor, presented the draft National Communication Strategic Framework in December, I think it was, Doc. They then went and sat as a provincial core team. We call it the provincial core team. They went and sat where they call all their district and their provincial communicators into a meeting, and then they brief them on that, and then they guide them to develop the strategies. So it's a cascading down and up. Obviously, content is important because G20, once we had a special technical GCF last year addressed by the very same Ambassador Mbongo, very brilliant speaker, I might add, we were able to then have those colleagues go to their provincial structures and brief them about this is G20, why are we having it, what are the benefits to our country. And remember, honourable members, we don't trust word of mouth, we provide toolkit. And I'll show you that in a short while. So basically, we have a number of subset forums, intergovernmentally, in the media space, in the audiovisual space, and in the digital space. Now, there's 2 very elegant-looking fellows there, where we had, at the end of January, our GCF. You'll see one of those fellows as a cluster supervisor, and the other one, an extremely capable head of communication for employment and labour. In that session, all spheres of government were together, we presented the second iteration of NCSF. Because that first iteration in January, honourable members, it's where colleagues from other spheres of government said, no, we don't agree with that, we don't like that. So it's not like we are imposing a strategy down the chain of command, it's that we are getting feedback and that. We also are able to provide feedback on the GCET, GSET we call it, the last bullet there. The GSET is an instrument that we have that on a quarterly basis monitors that plan that the cluster or the department has done. How many op-eds have you done? How many tweets did you have? So we check them and we give feedback to them. And that's also amongst what ourselves as EXCO, when we go to a cluster, we'll say there, well, honourable DGs, or not honourable DGs, please note, there's the report for the month. I must say it's not looking very good. And we have to be candid there, honourable members. Honourable Dika, we are very direct with DGs. And I must say, and by the way, Honourable Chair, I think I apologise for my DG, Miss Mnukwa, who's in Cabinet today. Mnukwa was very clever in saying, let the four of us get into those clusters, because it's very instructive for us to be able to hold that mirror up. We're not going there to point fingers. We're not going there to say we're better. We're going there to say, colleagues, this is where we think there's gaps in how you're executing this function. And then obviously, in another set of tax, we do have the responsibility for communicating Cabinet, and I must say the cadence of post-Cabinet briefings has been very well established by Minister Chaveni. We have that cadence of briefings, and obviously there's two levels. One, we would prepare with the communicator concerned that Mr. or that DG will expand on issues that come out of that meeting in their own time and the week after. And if it's a province that we will be having a premier or an MEC, that we will try and persuade them to amplify that. What we are trying to work on, and I think it is happening, although the footprint of media in provinces is not all the same, we are trying to work very hard that as provinces build their rapid response system, they are also building that provincial executive feedback loop, and the mayor is doing the same at their level. Another area of our service is around capacity and development in the communication function towards the big objective of professionalizing government communication. And I'm very pleased to say, honourable members, we have a duo. We have an in-house model. The skills of the collective, whether it's us here, whether it's a colleague in Home Affairs, is good at digital, somebody in the Office of the Premier is an expert on how to handle media things. We put a team together and we go out and